Today, I'm going to address an article in the New York Times called Cutting Babies' Tongues. So, tethered tissues is something that a baby or a child are born with. And back when we used to have doulas, they used to have a long fingernail. And when a baby was born, they would take their finger and just release that attachment that was under the tongue so an infant could attach and latch and nurse. And once we started going to the hospital, that practice kind of went away and babies weren't getting released the way that they were. And they grew up into having issues that were myofunctional disorders or latching issues or speech issues or things like that. And there have been hundreds of thousands of people that have suffered from tethered tissues that weren't released when kids were younger. And so we're not necessarily cutting babies' tongues, we're releasing a band of tissue under the tongue that is keeping the baby from nursing or latching on. So there's a huge controversy about anything, right? And there are risks and benefits to different things. And that's why it's important that you know what those risks and benefits are. If you're a mom that is having pain when the baby is latching, if the infant is not gaining weight, it could be because of a tethered oral tissue. And there is plenty of research. Here's all these different articles that tell you about what can happen if you don't release that. And my daughter didn't necessarily have an attachment. So there are different types of attachments, classes. And we were taught when I went to school, when her dad went to school as a dentist, that you were only tongue-tied if you looked like this. Well, she didn't look like that. She looked like this. So that is a class 2 tongue tie. And when I was told she had ADHD, I realized that I didn't feel that she had ADHD. She did have some sensory issues, and I also think that kids are labeled, and we also treat symptoms. So we diagnose people based on the symptoms that we're having. And what I found was that ADHD and sleep disorder breathing have very much identical symptoms. And if you can't stick your tongue out, or you don't have a speech problem, or you don't have a problem latching, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have a tethered tissue. And going back to addressing cutting babies' tongues, releasing that tissue actually can help them thrive, sleep better, not have symptoms growing up. If your child has dark circles under their eyes, if they sleep or sit with their mouth open and look like this, they're actually having mouth breathing or airway issues. And if you don't address these tethered tissues, these children can grow up having airway breathing issues, having focus problems, having behavioral issues, wetting the bed, and also not being able to thrive and not being able to eat. So if you have a child that is a picky eater that smacks their food, they could not be able to chew, breathe, and swallow. And when they're young, they need to eat, breathe, and swallow. So these tethered tissues, and looking for that is going to be something that is important for your children to survive and thrive. So this article addressed what could happen if a surgery goes wrong. And there are risks to any surgery, right? I had a double mastectomy. And they don't tell you when you go and they find cancer that, hey, there might be other treatments that are available. You don't necessarily have to have both breasts cut off. Well, there are other treatments that are available to having your child's tongue released. But that being said, if you release it when they're an infant, it is much easier. If you wait until they're older and they start having these issues, then you need to have myofunctional therapy along with that because you need to stretch the tongue. If you are to have these tethered tissues released when the child is older and you don't have some type of therapy that stretch that tongue, it can reattach. It can actually cause more problems because now the tongue can block the airway if they've learned how to function and other muscles of the face, neck, and shoulders have compensated for that, and you just go and release it. Now they haven't built up the muscles, they haven't learned how to control the tongue, and when they're sleeping, it could actually block the airway, cause more problems with eating and feeding. So please, 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 if you think that there is some type of a tethered tissue, whether it's a lip tie or a tongue tie, see a myofunctional therapist, see a lactation consultant, pediatric dentist, airway orthodontist, airway dentist, someone that has information in tethered tissues and has worked with many of children that have had this, or even adults. I've seen plenty of adults that have this or have a tongue thrust because they're compensating, and now it's causing a relapse in their orthodontist, or they need CPAP machines. And a lot of adults that are not compliant or don't like the CPAP machines, they actually do have a tethered oral tissue that went unnoticed. It wasn't treated when they were a child. So find someone who knows what they're talking about on this. Not all providers are treated equally. Not all of them know how to release these tethered tissues. Sometimes they just go and release the little band, but they haven't released it fully and it reattaches, or you still have problems. So making sure you have therapy beforehand, seeing a myofunctional therapist, being evaluated as to what is going on, not just, oh, I have a tethered tissue, I'm going to get it released, but how are you functioning? How are you swallowing? What's happening with your tongue? How are you holding your tongue? How are you chewing? When you smile, is one side more prominent than the other? Is one eye higher than the other? What does your posture look like? We need to treat our body as a whole. I know that we treat our mouth separately. It has its own insurance, but it's all connected together. What is your mindset? How do you breathe? What are you putting in your mouth? What is your posture? What's happening in your gut? How are your feet? How are you walking? All of this is associated with myofunctional disorders. And your tongue, when it's tethered, is connected to the fascia all the way to your toes. So it can actually create more forward head posture. And it's a little bit more involved than just going and snipping that little piece of tissue. So I am done with my rant about cutting babies' tongues and about oral ties. But if you have any questions, click the link below and I'll be happy to jump on a call and chat with you about it, about who should you talk to. Should it be a lactation consultant, a myofunctional therapist, an airway orthodontist, or someone else? Because sometimes it's not just one provider that you need, it's 5 different providers that you need, depending on what is going on in your body, to get everything aligned and treat your body as a whole, not just one symptom or sign that you're having. And your mouth is a warning sign into what's going on in your body. And this is why I talk about how your mouth is connected to your body. And knowing what's going on in your mouth and the risk factors is going to be important to not only have a healthy mouth, but a healthy body and a happy, healthy life. Thanks for watching and have a great day.